Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be breaking down my favorite position group to study, and that's the corners. This is an interesting cornerback class because I think there's a solid 8 to 10 guys, but there are some really interesting sleepers down the board that didn't end up making the list. This is an interesting class because I feel like the mid-tier of this group is pretty weak, but I like the day 3 value, and I really like some of the top-end talent. So it's going to be a really interesting class. This is my favorite position group to study, and I'm really excited to break this one down. But before we get into it, consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing if you guys are new. Helps the channel out a ton, lets me know you guys are enjoying these types of videos. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon page, which I will leave linked in the description below. It's just $5 a month, but it is one of the best resources on the market where you will get updated combine and pro day times with all of my written scouting reports, player evaluations, advanced statistics, and all of the information you guys need in order to be successful this draft cycle. Put a ton of work into it, and it's an easy way to support the channel. So that will be linked down in the description below. But before we go any further, I do want to talk about some of the guys that just missed the cut. Dorian Strong is the next man in. Just don't really love some of his athleticism. This is a guy that ran a 4.5 flat. Not really one of my favorite guys in the class. Bilal Kone out of Western Michigan. Huge my guy in the class. I've got him right on the outside looking in. Upton Stout, Denzel Burke, and Zay Alexander. Those are the next 3 after that. But I'm really excited about this. But let's kick this off with my number 15 cornerback in the draft class. And that is going to be O'Donnell Fortune, the cornerback from South Carolina. He's a really fun one and a guy that was a fun watch. He's 6 foot, 188 pounds. Another guy that didn't have the most amazing testing numbers, ran a 4.57, but is one of my favorite players in the draft class. And if you run a heavy zone coverage scheme, I think O'Donnell Fortune can be that guy for you. Had an 87.5 zone coverage grade, a 90.2 coverage grade this past season for South Carolina. He's a really, really good, consistent corner. He's got really good ball skills, seemed to consistently be in the passing lanes, had a nose for the football. I like his willingness to come downhill and defend the run. You'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent. Had a pretty high missed tackle rate this past season of 20.7%, but a player that shows a willingness to come downhill. He's got ball skills, and he's a really smart cornerback. I love what he does in zone coverage, which is probably where he's going to be at the next level. He is a little bit small at 6 foot 188. You'd like to see him add on some more weight. And given his lack of athleticism, he's not incredible in man-to-man situations. He's not the most fluid, not the guy that's going to be able to stick with receivers down the field. But in a cover 3 scheme where he could sit back, read the football, close quickly, defend the run, I think he's a really good player. And I think he's a solid 3rd to 4th round caliber corner. So if this is a guy that you draft in the 3rd to 4th round, I think he can give you some solid minutes, some solid snaps for you in a zone coverage scheme. So he's my number 15 guy, but it's a really close race between him, Strong, Kone. I think all of those guys are right there, but I like the ball skills of Fortune quite a bit. So I've got him at number 15. Speaking of ball skills, let's talk about Kobe Bryant at number 14. I've had his measurements all over the place, so we'll get it right this time. He is 6 foot even, and a guy that is a really, really fun watch. He's undersized, without a doubt. He's really slim for the position, sub 180, but man, he is so physical and so aggressive, and I love that mentality that he plays with. At the Senior Bowl, one of the biggest talking points at the event was just how loud Kobe Bryant was. He was constantly chirping at wide receivers, and I love that type of mentality from my corner. I want a aggressive, confident corner, and that oozes with Kobe Bryant's game. It showcases on his tape another guy who is a really, really good zone coverage defender. Had a 74.3 zone grade, 76.9 overall coverage grade. He's a great player. 4 interceptions, 4 pass breakups this past season. He is physical. He is really fluid. His change of direction and his hips really smooth. Thought he had great closing speed, obviously. He's racked up a ton of ball production over the last few seasons, and he's really good in zone coverage, which is what Kansas ran the most of. He has improved against the run, where he was one of the highest graded run defenders in the country at a 91.3 run defense grade, strong tackler. But where you worry about him, his weight, and I think he gets very handsy at times. Penalties have been a concern with Bryant throughout his career, and he just didn't test all that well. He ran a 4.53 at the combine. He doesn't play that slow, and that's something I always say. Don't look at combine times to determine if a player is good, because that doesn't tell the full story. But I think he has better speed than what he tested at, but it is definitely something to note. But the overly aggressiveness, as well as the sub 180 frame, could be a concern. Reminds me a lot of Emmanuel Forbes from a couple of years ago, and I really liked Emmanuel Forbes. So I think he's a really good third-round pick, and a guy that he just brings a different type of aggressive nature to that cornerback room that I think is really valuable. So I've got Kobe Bryant at number 14. At number 13, I've got Za Frazier out of UTSA, and a really, really fun player to watch. Another guy that is just a freak athlete, tested off the charts at the combine, ran a 4.36, 33 and an 1/8 inch arms, which are the longest of any of the corners that we will be talking about. 4.26 shuttle. Really, really good overall athlete. That's kind of why he's this high. This is a guy that, if you look at his history, has just not really seen a lot of production. He's only started one season for UTSA, and I believe he only started 8 games. This is a real project. He's 24 years old, but you are betting on the athleticism. He's 6'3", 186 pounds. He runs a 4.3. He's been a very strong tackler throughout his career, and he's showcased good ball production. Had 6 interceptions, 5 pass breakups this past season, 6.5% missed tackle rate, which is the lowest of any of the guys that we're going to be talking about. Really good and zone coverage once again, 79.3 zone coverage grade. I'd like to see him add on more weight. Looks really slim out there. Another guy that can be a little too physical, and I just hasn't played a lot of man coverage snaps, and that is something that does worry me a little bit. He only played 13% of his snaps this past season in man coverage. We haven't seen a lot of this player, but from what we have seen, I love his game. I love the physicality. I love the speed, love the fluidity in which he plays with, and the willingness to tackle. If we can get a little bit more from him, I think it could be a really, really good corner. That's why I've got him at number 13. At number 12 in this class, we've got Quincy Riley out of Louisville, a player that I feel like is kind of going under the radar. To me, he was the biggest standout at the Senior Bowl this year. He was everywhere at the Senior Bowl. He just seemed to consistently be sticking with guys in man coverage. Had a really nice pass breakup against Xavier Restrepo on day 2. He's so quick, so physical and aggressive, and I really like that. When you turn on the tape, it's weird because that's not the way that he typically plays. He's an average speed guy. He ran a 4.48, which isn't bad, but it's not incredible in the slightest. And I think his aggressiveness does come back to hurt him. And he is a really, really bad run defender. Missed 25.6% of his tackles this past season at a 40.2 run defense grade. He's coming off a career worst season for Louisville. A guy who started his career at Middle Tennessee State, transferred to Louisville, and he's been a good player for them, but a lot of inconsistencies on tape. Very overly aggressive, bad tackler, average speed, but I do like what he showcases in terms of being able to play in the slot, being able to play on the boundary. I think he's got really good instincts in terms of ball skills, and I love his fluidity and speed that he plays with. So all of that gives me hope that he can be a really good player. This past season was a complete mess for him, but I do really love what I saw at the Senior Bowl, and his 2023 tape is really freaking good. So I've got Quincy Riley at number 12, a guy that I think could be an early third-round pick, could play in the slot, could play on the boundary, but a guy that I really like what he brings to the table. At number 11 in this class, I've got Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State. I was late to the party on Jacob Parrish, full transparency here, but man, one of the most fun guys to watch in the class. And if you guys are worried, he's 5'9", 196. He is he plays way bigger than his listed size, I should say. Go and watch that Arizona game where he's matched up against 6'4" Tetairoa McMillan. And he does a really good job of holding his own, playing physical. And I just love the way that this guy plays. He's a really, really good athlete. Ran a 4.35 at the combine, 10.9 on the broad, 37.5-inch vertical. And he gives you inside-outside versatility. He can play in the slot at a really high level, but I also think he can play on the boundary because of the physicality and fluidity in which he has. Long speed is phenomenal. He's got good ball skills, is a reliable tackler, and like I said, he plays bigger than his size. I absolutely love that about his game, but he can be overly aggressive at times, and particularly on double moves. He bites a lot. Go back and watch that 2023 game against Missouri. He got torched by Luther Burden on multiple occasions where Burden would just hit him with the double move and would blow right by him. Obviously, the size is a concern. He's 5'9". That will push him down boards naturally. But I think in zone coverage especially, he just gets his eye stuck in the backfield. He's a little bit slow to react at times, but I really love his overall game. I love the way that he plays. And as a guy that I think probably will be a second-round pick at this point because the hype train is there, and it should be. He's a very good corner. This is around the range where I think all of these guys are really, really good players. Jacob Parrish in my final top 100 will probably be somewhere in the top 80. I really like him, and I've got him at number 11. At number 10, we've got Noel Williams out of California. One of my guys in this class. I just really, really love what he does at the position. Started his career at UNLV, transferred to Cal, and had 7 interceptions, 9 pass breakups this past season, allowed less than 50% receptions, only had a 5.7% missed tackle rate, and there's just so much there that should really excite you. Phenomenal length for the outside corner position, had almost a 75-inch wingspan, which pretty solid. Fluid hips, moves, can stop and go on a dime, sticks with receivers, kind of runs routes with receivers, which I really love. We mentioned the ball production. He is one of the smartest and most instinctual corners in the entire class. Instinctive, I should say. Once again, he bites on double moves a lot, and he allows a lot of yards because of it. He's so aggressive trying to make plays to jump passing lanes to get interceptions that he can be prone to getting blown by. I also don't love the way that he plays in terms of his stance. His hips are almost facing the quarterback at times, and he's playing sideways. I can't really explain it, but on tape, his stance is really strange. And I just don't love the way that he moves. I think his speed is pretty average. He ran a 4.5, but I just love the ball production, love the willingness to come downhill and hit. And I think he's going to be a really good player. He's a second to third round caliber guy. Another guy that I really like the frame. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. I'm a big fan of Noel Williams, and I think he's going to be a really good corner in the NFL. So I've got him kicking off the top 10. At number 9, I've got Darian Porter out of Iowa State. People are going to be really upset with me. This 9 through, I'd say 4, very, very close. Put him in any order you want to. Porter, to me, the lack of career production worries me a little bit. Really only started 1 year at corner as a former wide receiver, converted to corner. And look, he had a phenomenal season this past year for Iowa State. There's absolutely no denying that. He is a guy that allowed less than 30% on receptions, only targeted 17 times, had 3 interceptions, 2 pass breakups, 91.1 zone grade, and 90 overall coverage grade. All of that is phenomenal, but I do worry about some of the intangibles. He's still very raw as a corner. Is a bad tackler right now, had over a 20% missed tackle rate, hasn't really played the cornerback position a lot, hasn't had a lot of production there, and he's going to have to improve in man coverage. I think he's very up and down in that department. The reason he's so high is because he is an absolute freak athlete. 6'2", 197 pounds, 79 3/8-inch wingspan, ran a 4.3 flat with a 1.49 10-yard split, which is phenomenal. And he also had a 6.71 3-cone and a 4.04 shuttle. His movement abilities are so rare. He's so fluid, so quick. He is a former track star in high school. And that's why he's going to get picked within the top 50 of this draft class, because the traits are there. He is an older prospect. I believe he's 24 years old. Yes, he's 24. That's going to have to, that's just something you're going to have to live with. But the traits are phenomenal. And he reminds me a lot of Zion McCollum from Sam Houston a couple of years ago, who was turned into a really good corner for Tampa Bay. So I've got Darian Porter at number 9. And like I said, him to number 4 in this class, I'd say number 5. Very, very close. But I got Porter at number 9. At number 8, we got Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. People got really mad at me and my Maxwell Hairston prospect spotlight when I said that he wasn't a very fast guy. And then he went out and tested phenomenally at the combine, had the fastest time of any player, I believe, running a 4.28. And people were even more mad that I stood on that take. I don't think he plays at 4.28 speed. That's my biggest concern with him. He's just not his long speed is very average. He's got choppy footwork. But he's a guy that, if you go back to 2023, which is where I'm really looking at him because didn't play that much this year, less than 300 snaps this past season for Kentucky, and he had a bad year. 27.3% missed tackle rate, 55.1 man coverage grade, 61.1 zone coverage grade. And there's some inconsistencies there. But he is one of the smartest zone defenders in the entire draft class. Kentucky runs a lot of zone coverage, and Hairston did a really nice job of baiting the quarterback, flashing the ball skills, and he had the ability to take it to the house. He's got good closing speed. He can get in the passing lanes, react quickly, and I like that about him. He is a good tackler dating back to 2023, but he is still pretty small. He's 5'11", 179. He played a very scheme-specific role. Most of his snaps were in zone coverage, and he's going to have to improve his tackling technique. It came back to bite him this past season, and I just don't love the way that he plays. His play speed is not as fast as his testing speed, and it does concern me a little bit. He's still a really good player. I think he's going to probably sneak into the first round because people love the traits and the speed and the length that he has. I would push back on that. I think he is a strong second-round candidate. And if my Colts were to take him in the second round, I would be thrilled about it. But with where I stand on him, I think he's a heavy zone coverage corner right now. But you know the man coverage is in there. You've seen flashes of it. I think he's going to take a year or two to develop, but I've got him at number 8 in the class. At number 7, I've got Trey Amos, and I feel like no matter where I have Trey Amos, it's going to feel like I'm too low on him because I really, really struggle to find weaknesses in his game, and yet I can't really put him higher. He is one of the weirdest conundrums in the entire draft class because 10 pass breakups, 3 interceptions this past season, 85.6 coverage grade. Everything is there for him. Long arm, 77 3/8 inches, ran a 4.43. I really liked what he showed, but my favorite thing about Trey Amos, he was involved in seemingly every single play. Whether it was a tackle, whether he was closing on the football, his motor runs so high, and I absolutely love that about him. He is such a smart corner with some of the best instincts in the entire draft class. Great length, great physicality, great ball skills, and the ability to stop and go on a dime. Fluid hips, can come downhill, close quickly on the football. Another guy, though, that has struggled to consistently tackle, and I'd like to see him bulk up a little bit. I think he weighed in at 195 at the combine, which is phenomenal. If he plays at that weight, I feel pretty good about his future, but he's not the most amazing athlete. I think he's pretty average. He ran, like I said, I believe he ran a 4.43. That's a fine time. Not anything that moves me, but a 1.6 10-yard split does worry me a little bit. I'm like I said, I really, really like Trey Amos. I would take him in the first round. It's just really hard to figure out where to rank him because he is a little bit older. He is a little bit slower than some of the other guys that we're going to talk about. So I've got him at number 7, but I don't feel right about it. At number 6, I've got Benjamin Morrison. Full transparency, he'd be top 3 if it wasn't for the hip injury because his tape is really good. His 2023 tape, he looks like one of the best corners in the class. The only corner in college that gave Marvin Harrison Jr. a headache. I mean, he was locked down against Ohio State a couple of years ago. I do think one of my biggest worries, overly aggressive. Play strength is up and down, and he does bite a lot. He wants to jump passing lanes, but he moves really, really well. Great long speed, has great lateral quickness as well. He's physical, and I love his short-term memory. He will get beat on a play, and he'll go right back with that same aggressiveness, that same mentality on the very next snap. I love that. Good closing speed, phenomenal ball skills. Obviously, I'd like to see his tackling improve. Would like to see him be less aggressive, I should say, and not bite so often. But he reminds me a lot of Trayvon Diggs and just the play style that he has, which is a perfectly fine comparison. Like I said, we're really basing this off of 2023, and he looked phenomenal there. But the hip injury is a big concern, especially for corners where you are so reliant on your hips. You have to be able to move. I'm worried about that a little bit. So I still have a first to second round grade on Benjamin Morrison, but I have him as my number 6 corner. At number 5 in the class, we've got Azareye'h Thomas out of Florida State. Another guy that I was a little bit late to the party on. And look, another one of these really raw corners that the upside is certainly there for him. Had a 77.9 coverage grade. Just a lack of ball production. He was kind of behind Jarrian Jones and Bernardo Green last year. Only one interception in his career. He has struggled to be a consistent tackler, almost a 14% missed tackle rate this past season. He does struggle at being pushed off the balls. Play strength is really up and down. But his press technique and length, 77.25-inch arms, really, really impressive. I love the physicality, love the punch at the line of scrimmage. Got a smooth back pedal, and I love his long speed. He has the ability to stick with any receiver down the field. One of the best movers and some of the best change of direction you're going to see in this entire draft class. Stops and goes on an absolute dime. He's got the speed and quickness to recover if he gets beat at the line of scrimmage. And he's really physical with a great punch in press coverage, which I absolutely love. And he's one of the younger corners in the draft class. So I'm in on Azareye'h Thomas. As opposed to Darian Porter, who has similar measurables, similar athletic traits, I would lean Thomas because he's younger. And this is a guy that I would consider taking at the back end of the first round. I think this is where the first round corners start to be mentioned. And Azareye'h Thomas, to me, is certainly one of those guys. So really impressive tape. I've got him at number 5. At number 4, I've got Savon Revel out of East Carolina. I hate this because I really want to have him at number 2 in this class. And if it wasn't for the ACL tear, he probably would be in the running for my number 1 corner. Revel is phenomenal. I think he is one of the best corners that I have looked at in my few years of doing this. I think last year he would have been right up there with Quinyon Mitchell as CB1. He is so impressive. 6'1", 188 pounds, nearly an 80-inch wingspan, and 32 5/8-inch arms. Phenomenal testing numbers from him. He is an absolute freak. A guy that, unfortunately, his season was cut short because of an ACL injury. Had an 85.4 coverage grade this past season. 2 interceptions, 2 pass breakups on 204 snaps. He was on pace to having a phenomenal year for East Carolina. The size and length are exactly what you look for in a boundary corner. But what I love most about Revel, he is the best tackling corner in the draft class. He is so reliable, wraps up consistently, has a willingness to defend the run. He can play in zone coverage. He can play in man coverage. He's smart. He's instinctual, has great foot speed. His long speed is phenomenal. I think he's a 4.3 speed guy. He does tend to be flat-footed at times. He's an older prospect as well. He's 23, getting ready to turn 24. And now he has an ACL tear. He's going to fall to the second round if I had to guess. But this is a first-round player if he's healthy, and he's probably a top 15, borderline top 10 player if he's healthy. He is a phenomenal player, and the gap between him and number 2 is not as big as you would think for me. I think he's very close, but I give him the slight nod down just because of the injury. At number 3 in this class, I've got Jahdae Barron. I was really low on Jahdae Barron coming into the year because I saw him as more of a nickel corner. I don't see that anymore. I really think he has the skills to play on the boundary. He's 5'11", 194, but he ran a 4.39. This is a guy that I think can play all over the defensive backfield. Whether you want to play him at safety, you want to play him in the slot, you want to play him on the boundary, he's got the fluidity and the speed to be able to do it. He's so smart in zone coverage, some of the best ball skills in the draft class. He is a hard hitter. He is a strong tackler, and I just love that he can play everywhere. He's getting a lot of Trent McDuffie comps. It's a really, really good comparison for him. McDuffie primarily does a lot of his damage from the slot, but I think that he can play on the boundary, and Barron has a lot of those same traits. One of the best corners I've looked at in this year's draft class because he moves well, he tackles well, he covers everything. The ball skills are there. He's going to be the first corner, true corner, I'll preface that, off the board if I had to guess, because the traits are really good. I think he could go as high as number 5 in the draft. I really think so. I've got Jahdae Barron at number 3 because at number 2, I'm not quitting Will Johnson. People are so low on Will Johnson because he went down with an injury. He only played in 279 snaps this past season. The prospect fatigue with Will Johnson is getting out of control. Go back and watch the national championship game in 2023. He is the best corner in the draft class. The only reason I don't have him as number 1 is because, we have an alien at number 1, but we'll get to that. He's got phenomenal ball skills. He can play in off-man coverage. He can play in press. Really, really smart zone defender. Great size at 6'2", 194. He's physical, but he doesn't get penalized. He doesn't bite on double moves. And he just doesn't give an inch. He is so disciplined in coverage. It's really, really impressive to see. Tackling is a bit inconsistent, and we saw that this year. And I don't think he's the fastest guy in the world. I don't think he's got this crazy long speed. In an off-man coverage scheme, though, Will Johnson is one of the best players in the entire draft class. This is a top 10 draft pick to me. I just don't really see very many flaws in his game. The ball skills are there. The movement abilities, the scheme versatility, it's all there for Will Johnson. He's just got to get healthy. He was in and out of the lineup this past season for Michigan. He's got to be healthy, but I absolutely love this player, and a guy that I kind of hope my Colts grab at number 14 if he's on the board. He would be a home run pickup for any team in the first round. But number 1, you guys saw it coming. It's Travis Hunter. The narrative that Travis Hunter is an okay corner and an okay receiver is, quite frankly, the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. He is an elite corner, and he's also an elite wide receiver. We'll get to that in the wide receivers episode. I mean, the long speed is phenomenal. We know how rare of an athlete he is, but he is so fast. The ball skills are unreal. Some of the interceptions he can make just make your jaw hit the floor. He understands, because of the receiver background, how to mirror routes really, really well. He's sticky in coverage. He's physical in coverage. But the improvements he made this past season in zone coverage cannot be understated because he was so smart in zone coverage. His ball skills are there. The closing speed's really good. He doesn't bite on releases. I would like to see him bulk up if he's going to stick at corner. He's 188 pounds. He has gotten torched a few times. There's just no way to get around it. Alec Manor absolutely torched him in 2023. I do want to see him be a better tackler and run defender. It's just not really a big area of his game. Granted, he's playing 200 snaps a game, or maybe not that much, but he's playing both sides of the ball. He's going to take snaps off as a run blocker and as a run defender. And I can't really discount him for that. But when he wants to hit, he's a good tackler. I mean, he is one of the rarest football players you're ever going to find because he can lock down people on one end and he's going to torch the corners on the other end. He's the best corner in the draft. He can play zone. He can play man. He's physical. He's athletic. And Travis Hunter is the number 1 corner in the draft class. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Who is your top corner in the draft? What does your top 15 look like? Would love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. But leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.